Here we go again. African-American shot by a police officer. He was unarmed. He's dead. There are protests now all across Arizona.
Speaking on the clause in the Declaration of Independence that all men are created equal, Taney wrote, quote, "It is too clear for dispute that the enslaved African race were not intended to be included and formed no part of the people who framed and adopted this declaration." Taney went on to say that black men had no rights, which the white man was bound to respect.
Sam DuBose is a 43-year-old African-American man that was pulled over by a University of Cincinnati police officer named Ray Tensing, and he was shot and killed. Now, Sam DuBose was not armed at the time of his killing. How does this happen in a democracy? How does this happen in the free world? The good news is that it looks like there may actually be justice for Sam DuBose. But the bad news is that it happened in the first place. So now the saddest part, which is the most devastating fact, I think, is that this was presumably a really happy time for Sam, because the day before he was shot and murdered by a police officer, he got engaged.
We begin with a white police officer accused of murdering a black man in South Carolina. He was charged Tuesday after a video of the incident came out.
I thought that my brother was gunned down like an animal. It was just unbelievable to me. When he said he's gone, I'm like, that's absolutely can't be true, that he's gone from a traffic stop. I said, that can't be true.
When you're wrong, you're wrong. And if you make a bad decision, don't care if you're behind the shield or just a citizen on the street, you have to live by that decision.
In Charlotte, North Carolina, a man involved in a car accident over the weekend went looking for help and wound up dead. He was shot again and again by a police officer who is now facing criminal charges.
I don't want to bury my son. My son should be buried in me.
Farrell, a former collegiate football player, had no criminal record.
You know, when people say it just doesn't add up, I'll tell you what doesn't add up. These photos. Look, do you know how many times I've ever sided against a cop? Never. But to me, this is bigger than a badge.
Police said no weapon was found at the scene, and it appears that the man was unarmed. One of the questions that will be raised during an investigation will be whether the officer could have used a lesser alternative force to subdue the man.
Yes, he was equipped with all the, all the appropriately issued police equipment, including taser.
Like the fact the homeless man shot and killed by LAPD officers, identified by friends as 25-year-old Brendan Glenn, was not armed.
The findings of our comprehensive, thorough, and independent investigation, coupled with the medical examiner's determination that Mr. Gray's death was a homicide, which we received today, has led us to believe that we have probable cause to file criminal charges.
I didn't understand what I did wrong. It was as if they were the class bully, messing with me for no reason. I guess it's karma for how I used to treat people.
Karma is no excuse for you to be treated like that by the people who are supposed to protect us. You know, I used to have a fear of gangs, but now my fear of the police has exceeded my fear of gangs because the police have no fear of repercussion. I mean, they just don't care.
Why do you believe they don't care?
Not only was my son harassed by the police, but we see it all the time in the news.
Why do you think we're seeing more and more black males being killed by police officers?
Black men being killed by police is nothing new, Chris. People are too quick to forget it's been happening since black people were brought into this country as slaves. I mean, the only difference now is technology allows their story to be told on TV. And the media is putting these images of slain black men on the news and magazines, just like they put images of lynchings on postcards.
But the messed up part about it is that that video really don't mean nothing. Like, how many times since Rodney King have we had videos, photos, and witnesses to show the brutal killing of a minority male, and no one's held accountable? Antonio Zambrano Montez, Tamir Rice, LeVar Jones, John Crawford, and Trayvon Martin. I mean, take the Eric Gardner case. Ramsey Orta gave Eric Gardner a chance at justice when he filmed his death. Yet, Orta is the one who's jailed in this situation. Does that even make sense to you?
Speaking of Trayvon Martin, Victoria, as a mother of a son the same age as Trayvon, what are your fears?
To be honest with you, every time my son is not in my sight, I fear for his life. The ones who are supposed to be protecting us, I feel like they're targeting us. So how am I supposed to have peace of mind that my son is going to be safe anywhere? I just don't know what I'd do if my son was arrested without explanation, then went into a coma, and the police won't tell me why. I'm okay.
Maybe we as a community just need police to be held accountable for their actions.
I understood Baltimore's unrest.
So do you think the riots were justifiable?
I'm not saying they were justifiable. You know, the riots weren't going to bring Freddie back. They weren't going to make the police who had him in custody come forward and apologize. And really all the people of Baltimore were doing was tearing up their own community. I'm just saying, I understood their rage and frustration.
Victoria, would you allow Tyson to be part of the protests if you lived in Baltimore?
He could be part of a peaceful protest, but I better not catch him being part of a riot.
Tyson, would you want to be part of the protests?
Yeah, sure. I'd love to go to the protests.
And the riots?
I don't know. I don't know.
You better know.
My fear is that he could easily be in the wrong place at the wrong time, and in the blink of an eye, he would no longer be here.
It's not about being in the wrong place at the wrong time in many of these cases. For example, Walter Scott had a broken taillight when he stopped. Nicholas Thomas was being served papers when police came to his job. Eric Gardner was illegally selling cigarettes on the street, and Freddie Gray had a long drug arrest record and ran from the police the day he was arrested. Now, I'm not saying these men deserved to die or lethal force was necessary, because it wasn't. But what I am saying is that if these men didn't have the circumstances to put a police officer in their life, they would still be here. So that's why I stay as far away from situations where cops could get involved.
What do you mean?
I check the condition of my car, such as the lights, the air pressures in my tires every day. I always wear my seatbelt, never drive over the speed limit or under the influence, follow all the laws to the best of my ability, pay any parking tickets immediately, and pay my child support on time. If I have anything to do with it, I wouldn't even come in contact with the police.
What are your thoughts on what your brother just said?
I think my brother is overlooking all the what-if factors. You could easily be innocent of not doing anything and still be targeted. For example, Trayvon Martin. No, he wasn't killed by somebody that was in the police force, but he was killed by somebody claiming to be there to protect the neighborhood. And he was just walking home from the store. And yes, there was footage found of Mike Brown stealing the same day he was killed, but the police officer that approached him didn't approach him for that reason. And Freddie Gray, well, he was arrested for whatever reason, and those police are responsible for manslaughter. Black men are being profiled and, as always, being pictured as a threat to society.
But if you prove yourself not to be a threat, then you have nothing to worry about.
And how do you do that?
Okay, don't be on the defense or aggressive.
How can you not be defensive when every week we're seeing a new unarmed black male being killed?
Let me finish. Don't resist arrest. Answer all the questions. Give no more or no less.
Okay, Uncle Tom, just say yes, massa, to survive. I didn't know we still needed to bow down to the white man like our grandparents and their parents did.
It's not an issue about black and white. It's about authority. You wouldn't be defiant to your high school principal or your boss at your job, would you?
Well, I've never had a fear that somebody at my job or high school principal would kill me, so there's no reason for me to be defensive when approached by them.
That's a load of bull. You can't sit here and tell me you've never been on the defense when approached by a figure at your job or at your school.
Well, if I know I didn't do anything wrong, then there's no reason for me to be defensive.
That's my point exactly.
No, the difference is being profiled and considered guilty of a crime. The police are acting as if they're the judge, jury, and executioner.
Joseph, do you have a response to that?
The best way to win the situation is just to prove them wrong.
You can't prove them wrong if you're dead. All I'm saying is I bet there are a countless amount of men who fit the description and were wrongly approached by a police officer. All you need is a trigger-happy cop to determine that you fit the description. What's in your ability to control that?
I was walking home. It was around 7 p.m. I remember the time because the sun had just set and it was dark. I had just got off the train coming in from working in the city. I was only a few blocks away from home when a police officer pulled alongside me. I greeted the officer with a good evening and I smiled. He asked me where was I going and where was I coming from. I told him, but I was confused as to why he was asking me these questions, so I questioned him why. He jumped out of his car, said I was getting smart with him, and he arrested me.
What was he arresting you for?
Well, I didn't find out until I got to the station. I was too afraid to say anything else while I was in the back of his car. As soon as they gave me the opportunity, I called my wife, told her what happened. She came down there in minutes.
Yes, I was there in minutes. See, I know that whatever he had been arrested for was a lie. I mean, he is the pastor of our community and a well-known person in our neighborhood. What could he have possibly done to be arrested? I mean, for God's sakes, the man doesn't even believe in jaywalking. So, I showed up with the head of the deacon board, the mothers of the church, my cousin, who is a lawyer, and several other people from church who were in Bible study with me when I got the call. When we got there, they said he fit the description of a man who attacked a woman earlier.
Well, how was the matter cleared up?
Well, thank God for the police chief. When I demanded to see him and told him what happened, he immediately let Gary go. See, he didn't know what happened until I got there because he was out patrolling. But see, he knows Gary is a figure in our community and knew he didn't do it. So he let him go and apologized, and then he reached out a few days later to apologize again.
Did they ever catch the real perp?
Yes, through the police chief's investigating. But the woman that was attacked, she wasn't any help because she identified me as soon as I got to the station.
Gary, do you resemble the real perp at all?
No. Actually, he's 10 years younger than I am. We have different builds. He's actually darker than I am. The only thing that may be similar is our height.
How'd she get you mixed up with him? I mean, how did the officer decide that you fit that description?
Because she's an old white lady who apparently thinks that all black men look the same. And the officer was just an idiot. Yeah, he was new. And he later got fired for arresting another black man.
How'd the chief figure out who the real perp was?
Well, the person that did it is a petty criminal, well-known petty criminal in our neighborhood. And we had several witnesses that were able to identify seeing him in the area. And the police chief tracked his movements. He later confessed after being questioned.
You know, there are really good, honest police who do their job well and who really do care.
Yeah, but there are a few that give the police a bad reputation.
And unfortunately, there are black men who do wrong and who make it harder for upstanding black men. I just thank God that the situation didn't turn violent like the Freddie Gray situation or something.
Doesn't matter if you're an older black gentleman or a young black kid. I feel like police treat us like we're a dangerous weapon, and the only way to stop us is to use bullets.
But see, that's the problem. Not everybody knows the law. You know, in most of these stories, the police are within the scope of authority, which is why they get off. If they are acting in good faith, then they will not get in trouble. Now, I'm not saying that in all these stories the police were right. For example, the guy in South Carolina with Walter Scott. He was wrong. He was very wrong, and he deserves to be locked up. Scott was in his 50s. The cop was in his 30s. You mean to tell me the cop couldn't catch him and he had to use a gun? That's crap. And on top of that, he tried to plant a taser on him? That is in no way justifiable.
Do you fear all cops, or is it just white cops, Shane?
To be honest, I fear all cops. They all have the same training. However, I'm not gonna lie. I've been pulled over 2 times in the last 3 months, and when it was a black cop, I was a little more at ease. I felt like I could breathe. But when it was a white cop, I was a lot more tense, which could have easily been seen as being anxious and taken the wrong way. But at the same time, I feel like if it were a black cop and he were to shoot another black, he would probably get a pat on his back and high praise once back at the precinct.
Do you ever feel fear of the police, David?
No, not at all, because I know that there are certain standards that police have to uphold, and the same thing goes for citizens. You know, in most of these stories, the people who are being killed were already doing something unlawful. Now, once again, I'm not saying that these people deserve to be killed, but what I am saying is that if they would just follow the law and not fight back or resist arrest, they would still be here. Once again, Walter Scott, he ran. And now, we don't know what happened to Freddie Gray when he was arrested, but nonetheless, he ran when he was arrested. You don't run from the police.
William, as the grandfather of Shane and David, what do you think about their differing opinions?
That's what we fought against years ago. So our kids and our grandkids wouldn't have these fears. It's a shame that young black men have to think the way Shane does. As a former justice of the peace, I experienced racism firsthand from our community's police force. You see, the police were supposed to report the violations to myself and to another justice of the peace who was white, and we work out the fines and hand them down to the chief of police. There were 2 white officers. One of them never, ever gave me any violations. He only gave them to the white justice of the peace.
How was that handled?
Well, God handled it. The officer, he quit and went on to be a security guard someplace, and the other justice of the peace, he was actually altering the fines. He got fired.
So I'd like to compare the thinking between Shane and David when you're approached by a police officer. Shane, what was your thought process when you were approached by a white cop and a black cop?
When the black cop pulled me over, I was still on my guard, but I felt like he was really talking with me. But with the white cop, I felt like he was talking at me, and I was literally afraid for my life. I thought, is this the day I'm gonna die? So with everything I did, I made sure I told him what I was doing. I didn't make any fast movements. Told him I had to reach for my wallet, which was in my back pocket, to get my license. My registration was in the glove compartment, so I had to reach for it. I shouldn't be in fear of the police. They're supposed to protect me.
And the latter is what you're supposed to do. Not necessarily being fearful during the process, but You're supposed to follow what they say and give them what they need. Nothing beyond that, though. See, a lot of people don't realize that if a cop asks to search your car, the trunk or the glove compartment, you have the right to say no. An officer cannot search through your car without a warrant, arrest you for anything in your car beyond what they can see from the outside looking in. People need to know their rights. And I feel that if people knew these type of things, they would feel more at ease when being approached by a cop.
But even if you know your rights and you say no, or you question them back, they take it as being resisting or being combative. I had a party a couple weeks ago. Police officer showed up. When I opened the door, he asked to see inside the house. I knew he didn't need to see inside the house and couldn't come in without a warrant. When I said that, he radioed for backup and said I was resisting and being non-cooperative. I then opened the door all the way and showed him that everyone inside was recording with their phones everything that was going on. I told him that he was being recorded saying I was resisting when I wasn't. He then radioed that he didn't need backup anymore, told us to keep it down, and he left.
There are police like that, Shane. There are police that are racist, and there are others that just plain have it out for people, period. There are some that they don't have any experience with black folks, and there are others still that are flat out afraid to go into black neighborhoods. I think that some of the training and the militarization of the police causes a divide, division, a separation between them and us.
So do you think black males should have an automatic fear of the police?
I don't think they should necessarily have a fear, but they should certainly be cautious. People need to understand that you could be the nicest, law-abiding citizen, but the cop that's approaching you doesn't know that. And you don't know that just last week he pulled somebody over for the same violation and got shot at. You see, the police, they have to be on their guard also. When entering into certain situations, such as a domestic violence call, they could be meeting the nicest, most law-abiding citizen in the world, but they're meeting them at the wrong time.
But, excuse me, grandfather, but so what you're saying is, no matter how good of a person I am, the police are always going to view me as a criminal? They chose to be police and supposedly protect us. I didn't choose to be black, and they're going to hold that against me?
But not all cops are like that. Yes, there are some who are assholes and who are bred like that and just want to hand out tickets. There's a few of them in my class who are like that. But I'm not like that. And none of the people who I associate with are like that.
That could easily change, though, David. Once they have that gun in their hand and they have the authority to use it, power can go to some people's heads and actually change the way they think.
What do you think should be done to eliminate the possible overly forceful police who resort to lethal force?
More training. Simple as that. I think every police officer should be in tip-top shape and able to run after a suspect and tackle them to the ground, or at least get close enough to use their taser. If it's their job to protect us, then they should be able to hang with the best of them in respect to physical ability. Then maybe they won't be so quick to use that gun. Police need to learn to think critically and learn other ways to evaluate a situation.
What my grandfather is saying makes sense, and I think it will help in some cases, however, not all. You will have those that will choose to view blacks as a threat and inevitably treat blacks different. I saw online there was a white man who had a gun and he shot it in the air that he just stole, clearly showing that he's willing to use it. Police talked him down. Do you think they would do the same if it were a black person? No. We saw that with 12-year-old Tamir Rice, who had a toy gun. I saw on the news there was a white man who had a death wish and kicked the police officer, so obviously he was close to the officer in proximity. But when it's a black person, even if they're several yards, even feet away, they shoot him. It's unbelievable.
David, with all this news about the police, do you have any doubts or fears about becoming a police officer?
No. Police, they have their good times and they have their bad times. And I think it's all prompted by the media. You know, there are times when the public or the minority public hate the police. For example, when NWA came out with the song F the Police. But then when 9/11 happened, everyone loved the police and praised them for their work. Now they hate the police again. I just hope by the time I'm in the force, we will be experiencing the good times.
What do you think can solve the division between the public and the police?
Police need to get out more. Go around the community. Say hey when they're on patrol. Talk to someone who's sitting on their porch or even the corner store owner. Let them know that you are people too and not necessarily all about being out to get people.
I think that can cause problems at times, though, David. I can remember 3 chief of police who were from the neighborhood. And when something happened, something went down, there were certain community people who wanted breaks, who wanted favors. How do you avoid that? How?
Having a relationship with a police officer is no different between that and a mother and her child. Yes, you will have good times. Yes, you can come to them with your problems. But at the end of the day, a line has to be drawn when it comes to respecting that power figure.
Do you know why we're here today?
To talk about the men on the news that died.
Yes, that's right. Has your daddy talked to you about these stories?
Yes.
What does he tell you about these stories?
That these men are being wrongfully killed. That I need to be careful because police are regular people too who have feelings, who can hate, who can be scared, who can react without thinking.
What do you think about these stories?
I think they're sad because they didn't hurt anyone. And the police hurt them.
Christian, what do you think about these stories?
They're scary because I don't want them to kill my dad for no reason. And I don't want them to kill me.
What do you think when you see a police officer?
That they will kill me even if they just thought I did something wrong.
So what do you do when you see a police officer?
I hold my head high because I'm proud to be black. I smile knowing no weapon formed against me will prosper with God on my side. And I don't make any quick movements so they don't fear me.
My son shouldn't have to fear when he sees an officer. He should feel more secure and protected. But instead he feels the only one that can protect him at that time is God.
Terry, some people might say you're instilling fear in your children, but if anything, do you think it's appropriate to talk to young children like this?
I do. My son needs to know, so he knows he needs to act accordingly in public and how he needs to avoid situations that could end up in trouble.
And your little girl?
Listen, Chris, this is the real world. These are our realities that they will face. I don't want to take their innocence away. But as a single father, I need to take every step possible to educate my children. Did you know that young black males are 21 times more likely to be fatally shot by the police than young white males? And 67% of teens killed while fleeing or resisting arrest are black. I don't want my kids to be another statistic.
There are many statistics that your children could fall victim to. What do you say to the people who bring up statistics about black on black crime?
That's a statistic that's overplayed. How many whites are killed by other whites? Is that a statistic that many people talk about? No. It's my duty to educate my children of statistics that they can prevent and avoid. Do you know the ratio of black men in jail compared to white men?
I'm afraid I don't know.
African Americans are incarcerated at nearly 6 times the rate as whites. According to NAACP, if current trends continue, 1 in 3 black males born today can expect to spend time in prison during their lifetime. Follow me on this, Chris. 14 million whites compared to 2.6 million African Americans report using illicit drugs. But blacks are sent to prison 10 times the rate for drug offenses. You tell me what's wrong with that picture. This country has more problems in it than a little bit. Problems that go beyond the legal system. Do you know any statistics about teen pregnancy?
No, I've never researched that either.
Most people can't say they do know. About 820,000 U.S. teens become pregnant each year. That means 34% of teenagers have at least one pregnancy before they turn 20. I would not allow my kids to be a part of these statistics. And to help avoid that, I educate. A study a few years ago showed that 1,034,000 African American men were enrolled in a degree-granting institution, compared to 841,000 African American males in prison. And of those in jail, 164,000 are of college age. So why do so many teach that there are more black males in prison than college? The numbers don't add up, Chris. They just don't add up. I say all this to say, teaching my kids the true facts will educate them on who we are as a race and help them decide what statistic they want to fall in, including being a victim of an ignorant, fearful man who may call himself a police officer.
Yes, Shayna? Would you like to say something?
Yes. Please don't hurt my daddy. He's the best daddy, and he won't hurt you.
Don't let your personal thoughts get in the way of you doing your job.
Don't assume.
My kids' lives matter.
They kill our fathers. They make fun of us for being fatherless.
Officers, get to know your community.
I too fear for my life.
You have to give respect to get respect.
I began the journey of this documentary after overhearing my 13-year-old niece and her friend. I'm not sure how a conversation about police brutality begins with girls of that age, but I clearly recall my niece's friend say, "I feel like I really can't trust the police." Now, my niece agreed that the stories were sad, but she couldn't agree or understand her friend's sentiments or mistrust of the police. Much of white America can relate to my niece. A large portion of white America believes that in a post-civil rights society with a black president, that we are pretty much a colorblind society and have fulfilled the dream of Martin Luther King Jr. that men are not judged by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character. Sadly enough, though, much of black America feels the exact opposite. After listening to the individuals in this documentary and speaking with other African Americans about the situation, they feel attacked, targeted, that no matter the content of their character, they are not safe from being judged based on the color of their skin. The tragic stories of black males killed by the police or while in police custody may be part of a larger issue of police enforcement in interactions with everyday citizens. And what types of officers are responsible? The photographs of the 6 officers indicted in the Freddie Gray incident, black and white, male and female, suggests that lack of moral judgment is not limited to any one race or gender. With so many in society being pro-life, is the value of life being cheapened? Is the life of a man who stopped for a broken taillight or for illegally selling cigarettes on the street worth any less than the life of an unborn child? Perhaps the basis of humanity, love, can resolve the issues we face. Perhaps love can put the value back into life. Whether Christians, Muslim, Hindu, Jew, or other religious affiliations, the simple concept of love one another forms the basis of our faiths and guides so many of us in our daily lives. And even agnostics and atheists see love as a foundation of life. Fox News commentator Greg Gutfeld expressed he was sickened by the Walter Scott story. He said he didn't see a black man being shot by a white man. He said he saw a man being shot in the back by another man. But how many of our citizens saw a man being shot with disrespect, like a runaway slave? No matter how you view it, how can these men's lives matter any less than the lives of our own brothers? I'm Chris O'Neill. Good night.
He didn't deserve it. He didn't deserve it. He was just trying to protect me, and then he got in a fight, and he was just trying to protect me, and they shot him. The police, they showed up and they shot him. I heard him. I heard him say that he was reaching for his inhaler. I heard him say he was reaching for his inhaler. Don't shoot. He said, don't shoot, and they shot him. Why couldn't they